Hi everyone, welcome to the Whiteleyverse with me, Connor Whiteley, for another daily short story. Now, before I start today's story, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to buy this short story and any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers and at your local bookstore and local library if you requested, and you can order paperback copies from Amazon. Now, here's today's short story. I hope you enjoyed just as much as I did writing it.
Man in the Snow. This was the day he died. Why doesn't our house have a snowman? David Peters finished making his piping hot battery acid coffee with a shot of maple syrup and just looked at his beautiful wife Linda. He had no idea she wanted a snowman. He didn't know she even liked snow, and most importantly, he had no idea she was thick, because it was impossible to have a snowman without snow. It hadn't snowed all year. He picked up his boiling hot mug, leant against their brand new bright white kitchen worktop and really tried not to smile. He loved Linda more than anything else in the world, because normally she was very intelligent, kind, and just an amazing woman. They both volunteered to read to disabled children at the weekends. She was a high-powered lawyer for the innocent, and he worked his socks off every day to provide for her too. Yet it was so stupid that she wanted a snowman. He went over to her through their Christmas wonderland of a living room, filled with red, green, and bright orange tinsel that covered the walls so thickly that it was probably going to mark all the painting he had done only a month ago. He almost tripped over the 50,000 little present lights that she had brought, and the thick layer of pine needles from the Norwegian Christmas tree that they simply had to have stabbed into his bare feet. And he wrapped his arms round her beautiful, thin, seductive waist, and there was snow outside. He had literally put the bins out 10 minutes ago, and it had not been snowing. It was a crisp, chilly December morning a few weeks before Christmas, and there were no signs of snow. Now everything in Hell's Place was covered in a thick layer of snow. It wasn't a dusting, a light sprinkling or anything. It was a thick layer of white, powdery snow that covered everything like a blanket. David shook his head. Damn Hell's Place. Why did Linda want to live in such a weird, chaotic, and utterly strange former council estate? He had wanted to live in Canterbury itself, or London, or even the shithole known as Medway. Hell's Place was not where he wanted to live. Look, other houses have a snowman, Linda said. David shook his head. Linda was right. He looked over the short-ass 3-foot broken fence of their neighbors, and both of them had identical snowmen in their garden. Both of them were in exactly the same position, height, and look. It was creepy. It was almost like the snowmen were looking at him. David didn't like this. He didn't want to get spied on by snowmen, and it was almost the holidays. He had presents to buy, food to source, and he had to prepare his wife's presents if he wanted his marriage to stay peaceful. Maybe we could make a snowman together, Linda said, kissing him on the cheek. David drank a bit of his coffee and enjoyed the strong bitterness on his tongue. It might not have been the worst idea. It would keep Linda happy, and that might buy him enough brownie points to get some peace later. He still needed to build her new exercise bike that cost over £1,000 because she loved it so much. It was a surprise, but a bloody complex surprise to put together. Sure, honey, I'll love that, David said, downing the rest of his rich, bitter coffee. You go and get your boots on, and I'll get started. He grabbed his boots, coat, and scarf from by the French doors, and he went outside as Linda ran upstairs. He stepped out onto the crunchy, perfectly mild snow, and it wasn't even cold enough to turn his breath into long columns of vapor like a dragon. It was a perfectly fine day. He picked up a handful of the wonderful snow and crushed it in his hands. The snow sliced his skin, and David hissed in pain. Linda, David said. He looked back at the house, but he couldn't see it. He had literally just stepped outside, and he couldn't see his own house anymore. There was only a sheet of snowy whiteness, like a snowstorm was only a few meters from him. The temperature bombed, and an intense shiver ran down David's spine. He gasped as the air felt like it was freezing his lungs with every single breath he took, and he felt like a dragon at the amount of vapor he was pouring into the air. He was freezing cold, and he should have grabbed a thicker coat. David stumbled towards the snowy white sheet, and he reached into it, but he couldn't feel his house. He couldn't feel anything. His fingers felt like ice. His feet were numb, and he couldn't even shiver anymore, because every single cell in his body was freezing. "Linda, help me. Please. Don't come out," David said. "Dave, where are you?" Linda asked. "Where's all the snow gone?" David's eyes widened before they froze open, and he went to gasp, but it was too painful. All the saliva and moisture in his mouth just turned to ice, and he watched his sweet, beautiful wife step outside. He wanted to reach out, touch her, and order her to go back inside, but Linda was perfectly okay. It looked like she was walking about on a hot summer's day, without there being any snow at all whilst he was freezing to death. "David?" Linda asked. "Honey babe, where are you?" David hated seeing her shoulder slump back, her face fall, and her beautiful smile died as it sunk in that something awful had happened and that he was no longer here. "Hell's place, Edward. Have you taken my David?" Linda asked the warm air. It took David a few moments to realize what the hell his wife was doing, and he realized that they lived in Hell's Place. A strange, magical, and freaky place where people went missing, died, and strange things happened on a daily basis. Edward Hales had ruled over the estate where Hell's Place was built on in the 1800s, and it was nonsense, but even now people still believed he ruled over the land. David didn't believe in such crap, but maybe he should have. A deafening laughter echoed all around him, and David wanted to shake his head, but he couldn't. It was even worse as Linda shook her head. An icy tear rolled down her left cheek and she shook her head. "You bastard," Linda said. David wanted to hug her, touch her, and tell her that everything would be okay because he was still here, but he could feel the icy cold snow turn to ice around his body. Within moments he was covered in ice, and then the snow formed itself around him and his eyes morphed into little chunks of coal. His nose grew massive and orange, and searing pain filled his head as it got rounder and rounder. If his body was made from flesh, then maybe he would have cried, screamed, or shouted out in defiance, but it wasn't flesh and blood anymore. He was a snowman, and in the magical world of Hell's Place, David saw the truth about the snowmen in the neighborhood gardens. They were victims just like him. The neighbor to his left had a young beautiful woman encased in snow, ice, and death. David might have known her once, and he had thought she had simply finished at Kent University and moved far away. Nope, she was just another victim of Hell's Place. The same was true for his neighbor on the right. That house had an elderly man encased in snow, blood, and ice, and he could feel they were still alive, still watching, and still seeing their loved ones. So over the next few years, David watched Linda grieve, fall in love, and have her heart broken over and over as she tried to replace him. It broke David's heart just as much as he hated seeing Linda sit on the step of their back garden crying every single Christmas, just waiting for him to come home. But he knew deep down he was never coming home again. He was encased in ice, snow, and death forever because he belonged to Hell's Place now. He was never going to see the warmth, love, or touch of his wife ever again. 40 years later, on an icy cold Christmas Eve night, Linda shuffled out of the house with her Zimmer frame. David wanted to cry so badly at the sight of his wife being so fragile and needing so much support that he couldn't give her, and he could tell she was about to die. Her breathing was shallow, and he had a sense that his wife knew where to look at him. And David felt the ice, snow, and death that encased him loosen just enough for him to move a final time, so he went over to his wife, and her cold, dying eyes brightened up for a moment. Just a moment. He went to touch her, and she hissed in pain at the sheer coldness of his icy stick-like limbs, and he almost poked her eye out with his carrot nose, but he hugged her. "I never gave up hope," Linda said, straining out every single little word. "I love you so much, David. Fuck Hell's Place for taking you." David wanted to tell her he loved her too. She was his everything, and she was still the most beautiful woman ever, but he couldn't. He didn't have a mouth, he didn't have anything to give her, so he simply held her even as he felt his icy and snowy body melt. "I love you," Linda said as she took her final breath and died. David kept holding her, and he cried as his body melted more and more, because he was finally free to die an actual death instead of being a snowman forever. As his stick-like arms melted, David poked his carrot nose through Linda's clothes, just so he could always be with her, touch her, and they could die together as he melted, and his watery body went everywhere except towards the woman he loved. A final act of evil during the holiday by Hell's Place, but David died, knowing that he had beaten Edward Hales. He had died holding the woman he loved. He knew she loved him even at the end, and a small part of him had died touching her. He had managed to feel the warmth, love, and touch of her again, so he had won, and if anyone was going to argue with him about that point, then David would happily make them a snowman too. He had won at Christmas. That meant he could die a very, very happy man in the snow indeed.
Welcome back everyone, it's me again, Connor Whiteley. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's story, because I flat out love writing, creating stories and sharing them with you. If you really enjoyed today's story, then please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the internet engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithms. And if you want to buy this short story or any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get them from your local library if you requested, and you can order the paperback copies from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. Lastly, if you want to support the channel on a one-off basis, then you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. Also, if you know anyone who would enjoy today's story, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the channel. So, thanks for watching the Whiteleyverse, and I'll see you again soon. Have a great day, everyone.